Okay, so let's take a look at our kit. You can use really any kit that's based on Arduino Uno. There's many of them out there. This one happens to be pretty inexpensive and complete. So we're going with this one. It's by Aligo, the Super Starter Kit, the Uno R3 project. All right, let's open it up. And we're not going to be using this DVD, although it contains a number of programs we can use. This is the actual processor we'll be using. Let me take it out of its anti-static bag here. It looks like that. We won't be talking about this much more. We're going to be using this. I'll set it aside over here. This is a thank you. Don't need that. These are called resistors. We'll be using those throughout the project. And initially they're marked, if you can see, this one says 100 on them. So it's good to know kind of initially what the values of these resistors are. So we're going to use those. These are a set of jumper wires. We'll be using these a lot. They're enabling us to connect this Arduino Uno to a number of different things. So let's set those aside as something useful. Here's a little propeller that we can connect, or a little fan that we can connect to a motor that's provided. Here's the motor. Let's set that aside. We're not going to be using that in most projects or in projects. This is a little LCD screen, so we can print messages on it with our Arduino, and we will be using this later on, so I'll set that aside. This is a little attachment for a joystick. We're not going to be using the joystick attachment. Of course, you can use these on your own. They're sort of fun to play with. This is a remote control. There's a module that's provided that enables you to control various things with this remote. Again, it's not something we're using, and you'd think, geez, we're not using a lot of stuff, and why do we spend so much money on this particular kit? This kit is a fraction of the cost of other kits that have far fewer components that we'll need. So even though it looks like there's a lot of things we won't use, this is still the most inexpensive kit I could find. This is a USB cable that we need in order to program this Uno. That's the main microprocessor. There's a connector here, and we're going to connect that to our computer so we can program this Uno. So that's a necessary component. This is the thing the joystick little top attaches to. We're not going to be using that. This is a temperature sensor, a temperature and humidity sensor. We will be using that in our project, so I'm going to set that aside. This, as is apparent, connects a 9-volt battery, so we can connect this to our Arduino Uno and take it outside and just have it by itself, or take it wherever we want, and we don't need to be hooked up to our computer to power it. So it's just a power source for our computer. Don't need that necessarily, but we may, so I'll just set that aside. This is what's called a ping sensor. It tells how far something is. So it sends out some signal, and it computes how long it takes for the signal to come back. And from there it can compute, because of that bouncing off a solid object, how far away that object is. And this we may use, we may not use. It's kind of a 50-50 thing, but I'm setting it aside on this side of the not use items. This is a breadboard in this box. Let me take it out of the box. And we will be using this. There should be 2 breadboards in the kit, and we'll be using both of them. It enables us to hook these wires up to different components. So let's set that aside. These are more wires that we'll be using, so let me set those wires aside. Here's another little motor. We're not going to be using that in this course. Sorry, that takes a while to get out. This is 8-segment displays. And we'll probably not be using those. I'll set those aside. There should be another one here. I think it's this one. Oh no, this is a relay, and we're not going to be using this. This is a servo, so we can turn it to a particular number of degrees. So turn the servo 90 degrees, 45. So if we're steering a car or something, we'd probably be using a servo like this. And we are going to use it. I think this is an infrared sensor, so we can read in various values. Putting that aside. This is another way of prototyping circuits, and we're not going to be using this. It's a packet of LED lights. There's various kinds of LED lights in here, and we're going to be using all of them, or many of them, so we're setting aside those to use. There's various things in here, so let me see if I can see. There's a buzzer, which we'll be using. There's some integrated circuits. That's these things with a lot of little legs on them. And we're using the buzzer, and that looks like about it from here. So we're setting aside that. Here's some buttons, photo sensors to tell how bright it is, and we are going to be using a few other components, like I see some diodes in there, and a thermistor, another thing that tells kind of the temperature. So we're going to be using most of those things, so we're setting those aside. The battery to hook our Arduino to. Another connector that we won't be using. It's a supply module, I believe. And another thing we won't be using. So that's it, I think. A few pieces of styrofoam. Oh, no, there's the 8-segment display. And I don't know what was here. So we're not going to be using that 8-segment display. So let's review. And if you ever are in doubt, there's a little handy guide up here of what things are. But let me just sort through things here. Close this temporarily. So we are going, move these aside. So we are going to be using this breadboard. The main component is this Arduino Uno. That's the processor component we'll talk about. The resistors. Certainly the LED lights. This servo. This is the cable that connects, again, the Arduino Uno to our computer. The various wires, the connector wires. This is the temperature and humidity sensor. I'm running out of room. I'll put these up here. These are the little buttons and other things we'll be using. This is the LCD display. And I think those are the components we'll be using at least at the beginning of the course. So one thing to do is to just put those in the plastic box here and kind of leave the other things aside in some other storage place, just so the things you are using are just more accessible. So that's it. I hope that was helpful in looking at the project kit. Next, we're going to take kind of the detailed examination of this, the Arduino Uno. Bye.